Now, if you saw my seminar on Psalm 83 in the connection with Ezekiel chapter 38, I'm going to add this into the seminar that I gave because this is important information, critical information if you don't know the Lord. Now, what I wanted to show you was the connection about the third temple that the Jews are going to be building in a short period of time. And the Lord prophesied that this was going to happen. He showed it to us. And if you don't know the Lord, you're going to need to know about this, especially if you don't know the Lord, you're going to be left behind and you will see the temple be built. And the bad part about that is that you will see the Antichrist, because it's no doubt that the Antichrist is going to be giving orders for the Jews to go ahead and build their site or their third temple. So let's see what the Lord has to tell us here. Well, first of all, we see that there's going to be a confirmation, a confirming of building this temple. Look at this. It says, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. And if you do a study, I'll show you an illustration of the time period. But there is a 7-year period of time, and this is what Daniel was showing us. Now, in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering. In other words, the Jews don't have a sacrifice and an offering right now. They want to have one, but they haven't had one ever since Jesus was crucified in like 70 AD when the temple went down. They've been without sacrifices, and they're trying to build a third temple. And this is the one that in the middle of that 7, and I'm going to show you, like I said, I'm going to show you a photo of this chart, the breakdown, to make it easy for you to understand. But essentially what's going to happen is the Antichrist is going to go into the temple that will be rebuilt, and he's going to stop the sacrifices. And this is where Daniel shows us, in the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. So in the middle of this period of time, which he tells us here is 7, the Antichrist is going to stop the sacrifices which he allowed to go forward. So we know a couple things. Number 1, the temple is going to be rebuilt. Number 2, there's going to have animal sacrifices again. They have to, because Daniel 9:27 pointed that out. So if the Lord said to be on watch, one of the things you should be watching for is the progression. Are they getting ready to sacrifice animals like they did in the Old Testament? And of course, I'm pounding this information, and I'm compounding all the evidence for you, adding to all the evidence that I already gave to you from Psalm 83 and Ezekiel chapter 38. Now look at Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. And when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet stand in a holy place, whosoever read, let him understand. And so Jesus points to the very thing that Daniel had already showed us. Now let me give you a little breakdown on this so that you can fully understand what I'm talking about. Now, there's a long study that you can do about the 490 years that God has chosen to put on and to fulfill prophecy with the nation of Israel and the Jews. But let me just show you right here, from the time that this prophecy started, which it was in the starting date, as you see down here, and hopefully you'll be picking up in my YouTube channel here, and if not, but that starting date was March 14th of 445 BC. And we know that Nehemiah was given permission to go ahead and build the walls, and of course it was done in troublous times. And so from this issuing date, we know that the date started in exactly 483 years later to the day Jesus Christ walked into Jerusalem, and then he was killed in the middle of the week. So the prophecy was for 490 years, and we know from here to here there was 69 weeks. 7 of those, each week is 7 years. There was 69 of them. That equaled 483 years, or the total of 69 weeks, if you will. I know that it's hard to understand, but once you study it, it becomes very, very clear. So in short, this is what happened, okay? 445 BC, Nehemiah gave the command. 69 weeks passed into this prophecy, or 483 years, right? So that leaves 1/7 left. And this 1/7, again, in each 7 is a period of 7 years. 1 week is a period of 7 years. This is the period that Daniel was talking about, and let's go back here, that he would confirm the covenant, okay? He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, and in the middle of the 7, he will put the sacrifice, an end to the sacrifice and offering. So essentially what this is telling us right here now, this would be where it was confirmed by the Antichrist, and then exactly 3.5 years into this 7-year period of time, or 3.5 years, that's when the Antichrist goes into this temple, and that's the abomination, desolation, where he sets up his figure and he tells the Jews no more sacrifices, and that's the time period there. So how close are we? Well, we're all in here, right here. The time clock to deal with the Jews has stopped at the 69th week, or if you will, 483 years. And as soon as the church is gone, the rapture of the church, and the covenant is confirmed, the beginning of the tribulation begins, and then you start heading into the final 7 years before Jesus Christ comes back. And obviously, he comes back at the end of the 7-year tribulation. So hopefully that made it clear for you. I know that I'm going through this pretty fast, but time constraints, I'm doing the best I can. And as I said, I was going to show you some pictures. This is one of the pictures that you can see if you go and do a tour. And it's an area where it looks like a replica of the old city was built. And it stands about 3 foot high. You see the people walking around there. I had a good time when I was there taking pictures of this area. But this is what the new third temple is going to look like, right? So let me go on again. Here's another view of that temple, what it's going to look like. It's going to be fantastic when it's built. So let's go back in time now, and we're going to check out one of the articles that I pulled up back in 1982 when the Lord put me in the ministry in 1976. I knew that this temple was going to be built. And the Lord said, if you keep on the watch, as I said already, then you will see the things that Jesus told us to watch for. And since I knew that the temple was going to be rebuilt, I wanted to pick up information that showed us the progression going through the years of how this temple, we were getting closer and closer to having this temple rebuilt. And so in June of 1982, on the 28th day, this was an article from one of the magazines that was talking about the war or the skirmish that Israel had in Lebanon. And look what it says. It says, in a recent speech, Begin, of course, Begin has now passed away, but he was the prime minister of Israel back then. Begin spoke as Tyre as the source of cedar wood for the construction of one of the biblical temples. Now, what had happened is they went in and they did a war campaign in that area, and while they were there, they took the specialized cedar wood and they brought it back into Israel. And it's been stored there, and the reason why they have it there is because they wanted to use this material to rebuild their temple when the time came. So they were already in progression of getting ready or making plans to build one of these temples. And obviously one of these temples is going to be the one that Jesus Christ talked about. Now, here is a faithful try. This is an article. The faithful try to lay the cornerstone again. There's a movement, it's called the Faithful Movement. And there's also another one, it's called the Temple Mount Institute. And these groups are working to rebuild the temple at on the Temple Mount. And so in this article, you'll see it 1999, it says, Jerusalem, in another dramatic and what could be traumatic move, the Temple Mount and the land of the Israel Faithful Movement led by researcher and lecturer Gershon Solomon, will attempt to move the 4.5-ton cornerstone in place for the third, or for a planned, here you go, third temple on Monday at 9 a.m. Jerusalem time. It would coincide with the third day of the Feast of Tabernacles, in which thousands of Christians are in the city for the feast. And so this movement has this cornerstone, and let me show you a little bit more information about that. This is the article that I just read, and now let me get down a little bit more for it. It says, in the previous years, including last October 6th, the group was prevented from nearing the Temple Mount, presently under Islamic control. The Israeli security forces, the Temple Mount faithful, believes the cornerstone laying would initiate the rebuilding of the temple, now occupied by the Dome of the Rock shrine by the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Will this year be any different? Probably not, for such success would lead to huge riots between the Jews and the Muslims. Both consider the area sacred to their faith. Now, in October 1990, 17 Palestinians were killed when it was rumored throughout the Islamic quarters that the Israeli infidels were taking over the Temple Mount. Even a month later, Muslim youth were still throwing rocks at anyone who approached the area. Solomon and his supporters are zealous in their efforts. However, few believe that they will have any success, as author David Dolan has stated. There's not a chance in the world that the cornerstone will be laid. It's a publicity thing. There would be a huge riots if this happened. Now, in August, Prime Minister Ehud Barak sent Israeli police to the Temple Mount to seal an opening in the southern wall near the Dome of the Rock. The Muslim Waqf religious authority had widened a window, which Israeli Public Security Minister Shalom Ben Amin called a flagrant violation not only of law but also of the religious status quo. And so they've been having, as you can see here, obviously with the stone throwing and the legal problems. There's a lot of problems on the Temple Mount. And the person who said that they're not going to be able to lay this cornerstone, he was right, because they didn't do it at that time. And I'm going to show you why they didn't do it. Let me go to this next article. This is an article that I pulled up. You see the date, 1989. And I've been watching the news ever since then, I can tell you. And as we see here, the faithful movement went up to the Temple Mount. They started to get stoned. Anytime they get close to the Temple Mount, there's hostilities by the Muslims, just like they said there were going to be. So it says the leaders of the faithful of the Temple Mount said that they would continue their campaign to reestablish the Jewish temple on the site. We shall continue our struggle until the Israeli flag is flying from the Dome of the Rock, and I can assure you, everybody that's watching this presentation right now, that is going to happen. No doubts about it. It was written. We know that the Temple Mount is coming. We know that the Jews are going to control this area, whether the Muslims like to hear that or not. That's what the Lord God told us to look for. The temple will be rebuilt, and no doubt if the temple is built, that means that Israel controls that area, and there would be no problem of putting up the Israeli flag. So let's go now to 2006, because I wanted to show you these progressions. And here you have Gershon Solomon, who is the chairman that I already showed you in that last article. And there was another march in May of 2006, a major historical end-time godly event on Jerusalem Day by the Temple Mount and the land of Israel's faithful movement. The faithful marched to the Temple Mount and carried with them 2 marble cornerstones, 6.5 tons each, to be laid at the Temple Mount and start the process of rebuilding the third temple. Now, this is a great picture. Let me get to this article here. this is one of the pictures that this is Goshen, the chairman for that movement, and I wanted to show you this picture so that you'll get familiar what they actually look like. So let me move to another one here. We'll scroll right down because it gives you more information, so you can actually go to my site. I'm going to have all this information up there, and you'll have it. You could just Google it, put the title down and Google it if you want right now, and go and get it right there. But anyway, this is where they're housing these two huge blocks. These are going to be the foundation for the Jewish temple. It's going to be rebuilt. You see these people every year. They try to get this established. And of course, every single year they get closer and closer and closer to the fulfillment of both Matthew and Daniel chapter 9. So I'm just scrolling down, showing you some of the pictures at their website here. This is one of the pictures you see. Obviously, earlier when they captured this East Jerusalem area, it was in the hands of the Muslims and the Palestinians until 1967. And this is, again, this is Goshen Solomon. So let me go back now. We'll continue on. I just wanted to make sure that you saw. Now, speaking about the clashes, we see in October, again, 2009, clashes rise, Jerusalem tensions. Thousands of Israeli police have been deployed into Jerusalem during the Jewish religious festival after 2 days of Israeli-Palestinian clashes. Make this a little bit bigger so you can see it here. Tensions over the complex containing the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Western Wall have boiled over into rioting several times in the past 2 weeks. Police and rock-throwing Palestinians clashed on Sunday and Monday at the religious site and in East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem was, again, the contention. The area was taken away from the Palestinians in 1967. It says the religious site known as the Temple Mount to the Jews and Haram al-Sharif in the Palestinians is hotly contested and was the flashpoint that led to the Palestinian Intifada or uprising which broke out in the year 2000. So what I'm showing you here is war and conflict at the Temple Mount, and because of they're talking about and trying to go up every single year to try to lay these cornerstones, it just causes more tension and more hardships, and that's the way it's going to be until the Temple Mount is done. Now, we have some huge news that came out, and this news broke out in let's see, October of 2004, and this had to do with the Sanhedrin. All right, now the Sanhedrin, well, let me just read this. A unique ceremony, probably only the second of its kind in the past 1600 years, is taking place in Tiberias today, the launching of the Sanhedrin, the highest Jewish legal tribune in the land of Israel. The Sanhedrin, a religious assembly that convened in one of the holy, here we go, I'm going to tie in here, remember, the holy temple chambers in Jerusalem comprised 71 sages, existed during the Titanic period and several decades before the Common Era until roughly 425 CE. Details of today's ceremony are still sketchy, but the organizers announced their intention to convey 71 rabbis who have received special rabbinical ordination as the specified of the Mennonite. So what you have here, if you know your history and you know the Bible, you'll know that Jesus Christ was brought before the Sanhedrin. It was an illegal court that they brought him up at nighttime. They brought him in at night. That was never supposed to have happened, but they did it anyway. And of course the Sanhedrin disappeared. Now if we're in the last days, it only makes sense that the Sanhedrin would appear, and one of the first things that they have done when this group of religious hierarchy people, rabbis, got together was, guess what? They wanted to do something about the Temple Mount, which you're going to see. And here's the article about it. It says, members of the reestablished Sanhedrin ascend Temple Mount. Now, first of all, just the fact that the Sanhedrin are here is a huge deal. Very huge. And then it's even furthered, this huge deal is furthered by the fact that the first thing that they wanted to do is go up to the Temple Mount. In a dramatic but unpublicized move, members of the newly established Sanhedrin ascended to the Temple Mount, Judaism's holiest site, this past Monday. And why did they go up there? Because they were looking at the site. These 50, there was 50, close to 50 recently ordained Munchkin members of the Sanhedrin lined up at the foot of the Temple Mount Monday morning. And then it tells you what this word Munchkin means. It comes from the root of es mitchim, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but the rabbinic ordination, the many ascending to the Temple Mount for the first time and immersed in the ritual baths. They got clean before they went up there that morning and planned to ascend as a group, despite prior approval from the Israeli police, who oversee the entry to the mount. So here's what happened. They got together, they did their ritual rites, they cleaned up themselves, they were going up to the Temple Mount, and obviously they were stopped. And I have a section here that I wanted to bring up for you so that you can actually see this. Let me scroll down. This is one of the other programs that I put up. There you go. You'll see it better here. This is the members of the reestablished Sanhedrin ascend to the Temple Mount. Now, in this article, what they're saying, this is the partial article, and I wanted to make sure that you saw where I took it from and the whole deal, because that's important that you understand exactly where I'm getting it from. They were not able to go up altogether, and as a matter of fact, there were visitors that just were filing past them, and they had to wait here. And one of the reasons why they had to wait there is because of the contentions that would have brought if they went up. It would have caused havoc and probably more riots, and so the Israeli police are trying to control what's going on up there. So let's move on. The Sanhedrin to purchase sheep for Passover sacrifice. Remember what Daniel said? The Antichrist was going to stop the sacrifices. Well, here we go. Now we're seeing that the Sanhedrin is here. And now the Sanhedrin are going up to the Temple Mount, knowing that they're going to do whatever they can to get the temple rebuilt again. And now here they have this religious group that was the judge and put Jesus Christ in front of them, is now coming together and trying to get ready for the sacrifices. Are you understanding what the Holy Spirit is trying to show you here? I certainly hope so. It says the modern day Sanhedrin, headed by Rabbi Adin Steinschultz, has decided to purchase a herd of sheep to be used for the Passover sacrifice ritual to be held this year, if possible, at the Temple Mount. The Sanhedrin, which was formed several years ago, meets once a week, according to the Heresies News Service, in what it says is a renewal of the Jewish High Court that existed more than 2,000 years ago. So there you go. That was the first set of news that I got. The Lord was, I'm standing on the wall for everybody, trying to give you as much information as I can, and you're seeing it's converging right down to the very scripture that Daniel and Jesus warned us about. But there's more news about these sheep. Now keep in mind, Daniel said they are going to stop the sacrifice in relation to this. He was addressing what the Antichrist says. So we're right on the mark, we're right on the railroad, and we're going down the right direction we're supposed to be going towards the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Now here's another article, and I'm going to blow this up as well for you so you can see it a little bit better. There you go. The Jerusalem court rules for the Jewish temple movement. Get this. A Jerusalem court ruled Friday that the Jewish temple movement could slaughter a sheep on Sunday as the general rehearsal for the renewal of the Passover sacrifice. Animal rights groups, of course, they were up in arms, as you can see in this article. The animal rights activists got involved and and of course what they were saying is, let animals live. Had argued that the planned slaughter constituted illegal cruelty to animals. Now, in a ruling, of course, this judge did make the ruling, and you're going to see what the ruling is. That's the most important part. I was not convinced by the argument that the given event would cause the animal more pain and suffering than accepted methods of slaughter in the slaughterhouses. And this is why she passed this and gave the okay for the Jews to practice killing for the sacrifices. Now, that was one giant step in Bible prophecy. One giant step to Bible prophecy. I want you to understand that it is really important, because this is what we were told to look for. When ye therefore shall see the abomination spoken by Daniel the prophet stand in a holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. And all I can ask you now is, do you understand? Do you understand? This is huge in the makings of Bible prophecy. The fact that the government has given them authorization to start practicing for these things. They haven't been doing this for 2,000 years. And Jesus showed us that it was going to happen again. And this judgment right here, to allow them to do this, is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. Now let me just focus in on here, because this is the book of Numbers. And in the book of Numbers, we're told that you have to have a red heifer when you're doing these temple sacrifices. And this is what it says. And then the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, this is the ordinance of the law which the Lord hath commanded, saying, speak unto the children of Israel that, they bring a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. In other words, he was never tied up to do work. And ye shall give her to Eleazar the priest, and he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before the face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle it of the blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. And he shall burn the heifer in his sight, her skin, the flesh, and her blood, and with her dung shall they burn. So they have to get this red heifer. It's part of the sacrifices that they're doing. And of course, there hasn't been a red heifer around for 2,000 years. And but let me just say that I do whatever I can to find out, because I had heard this was a message that I sent to one of the heads, and this you'll see it here, Rabbi Clam Richmond, who's the head of the Temple Institute. And so what better advice to get and information to get than other than the head guy? And that's exactly what I did. It said, is it true that there is another red heifer that may take the place of Melody, who was disqualified? I just read on the website that the Jews have a red heifer born 3.5 years ago in Jerusalem among the cattle born in cattle born in and imported from Mississippi. I'm searching for the true facts. And then he said, shalom and greeting from Israel. Thanks for your email inquiry. Indeed, there are several candidates here in Israel. They are not from the USA, but born locally. And of course, that made a lot of sense to me, because why does God need America to give a red heifer when he wants to do it with his own nation? Don't you think that the Lord knows how to bless Israel and to get what they need to fulfill prophecy? Definitely. He goes on to say, however, our policy is not to reveal too much about this publicly. We have to be very careful. Suffice it to say that when the time comes, there will be a red heifer ready. So that just tells me right there, folks, that there is the making of the red heifer. And when the time comes, and this is why I believe now that the push is driving forward even more so right now in 2012 to get that temple built, because personally I believe that they do have the red heifers, and that's the moves that will be being made that could spark some serious repercussions there. Now, in an article that I was reading, it said this: as Rabbi Richman spoke to our group, I admit that I was not fully prepared for what the bombshell that he dropped on us. The question was asked by one of our tour members, Rabbi Richman, what about the red heifer? Are there any prospects on the horizon? Rabbi Richman disclosed a matter of factly, actually, we now have a red heifer. She is three and a half years old, and this is the first red heifer we've had since the second temple area that ended in 70 A.D. Now, Richman went on to inform us that the location of the red heifer is presently being kept secret because of the huge frenzy that was unleashed a few years ago when it was disclosed that the religious leaders thought that they had a qualified red heifer. So the Arabs don't like this. They don't want to hear any news about it coming. And this is part and parcel for all the problems that they've been having on the Temple Mount. So they definitely going to have to keep it a secret. Now, this was one of the pictures that we got way back when. This again references to Numbers 19:2-5, the red heifer, and this is the complete scripture if you wanted to read it. So, wanted to show you that. Now, in relation to what they have, what the Jews restored, what they used to have in the old temple for their sacrifices, you see that they have the priestly garments that are already there. They made them exactly to the spot, right on the mark, what it was like in the Old Testament when they were doing the sacrifices. And on display at the Temple Institute, the actual high priest garb he wore when he was in the third temple. So this is what they're going to be wearing when they start up the sacrifices. I don't think it's going to be that far off, especially now that they're getting ready to practice slaughtering or sacrificing the animals for their sacrifices there at the Temple Mount. They also have the golden crown, the pure golden fashioned by these craftsmen at the Temple Institute. It took some time. This is what it looks like. And this is what the high priest is going to be wearing. All of these things are, it is a blessing because it tells us that we're very, very close to seeing the fulfillment of the prophecy. Now, this is a video that should run really, really quick, and it's going to show you what the Temple Mount Institute has already made. So try to listen as best you can, and I'll show you what has already been done to bring about the sacrifices that are going to take place in that temple. No, I'm sorry. This is this video has to deal with the violence that is taking place in the Temple Mount. This is what I was showing you. You'll have to excuse me on this one. I got out of order a little bit. But it really shows you the violence that when people go up, when the Jews go up there to get anywhere near this Temple Mount, there is a skirmish that will ensue. And the Lord showed us in Zechariah 12:3 that Jerusalem was going to be a burdensome stone. And obviously, dealing with the temple and the Temple Mount has caused major problems. It's caused killings and wars. And this is one of those videos that shows us what happens when the people try to ascend to the Temple Mount. The Jews, that is.
Prayer time in Jerusalem, and frequently a day of confrontation and rioting. These Muslims use the time to throw stones and call for holy war against the Jews. Their stated purpose, to defend Jerusalem, and especially the Al-Aqsa Mosque, an Islamic holy site that's been part of modern Israel since the 1967 Six-Day War. Radical cleric Raed Salah is behind many of these demonstrations. For him, Jerusalem in the hands of Jews is the worst that could have happened.
في حاضرنا أشد من كارثة احتلال القدس الشريف والمسجد الأقصى المبارك منذ عام 1967.
Many of the million Arabs living in Israel feel the same way. Salah uses that anger to build support among his fellow Israeli Muslims.
إن أردتم تدخيلنا فعليكم أن تجهزوا.
Now, do you understand what's happening here? Just like I showed you in Psalm 83 and Ezekiel chapter 38, and they're on the Temple Mount, they're calling for the destruction of the Jews. And this area on the Temple Mount, I really believe, could cause a major war, and I believe that it's going to be one or the other. The Psalm 83 or Ezekiel war.
Money pours into Salah's movement from Muslim nations like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Qatar. And now activity around the Temple Mount is adding fuel to the fight. Israeli archaeologists are working to save artifacts from the ancient Jewish temple before they are lost in a construction project. But Salah and his supporters deny any Jewish claim to the site and charge the real purpose is to cause the collapse of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This Islamic leader says his followers are hated by Jews and Christians because his group is stopping the third Jewish temple from being built.
نحن بينه وبين تحقيق هذه القناعة وهذه النبوة، لذلك نحن نقول كذلك هذا العدوان السافر من هذه الجماعات الإنجيلية الأصولية الأمريكية.
Behind the rally's podium, a ship representing the goal of shipping Jews out of Islamic land. A goal this cleric promises will happen by force if necessary. Salah urges the crowds, wherever he is, to become ticking time bombs, saying they know Israel best and can defeat her from within.
لن يطول الزمان حتى تصبح القدس الشريف عاصمة إسلامية لخلافة إسلامية عالمية.
Intelligence sources say Israel must erode the Islamic movement's power. If not, they warn, the movement could become a serious internal threat to Israel's security. John Wagi, CBN News, Jerusalem.
As I mentioned a couple of years ago, the Lord showed me this was going to be the most dangerous.
All right, so they went on. He was going to talk about the dangerous area in this in the region, and no doubt about it is, as you see these people calling out to destroy Israel. It goes right in line with what we're reading from both those wars, Psalm 83 and Ezekiel chapter 38. So let's move on. Now this, let me speed this up a little bit for you. This is the one that I told you that it was going to be talking pretty fast and showing you all the different things that they have reproduced. They had to do this in order to have the rituals just the way it was in the Old Testament. And they're going to show you what those things are. So I know it goes fast, but you'll see it.
Temple Institute in Jerusalem. This is where they're storing all their articles. This is where they're training the priests and everything like that. Here's the first golden menorah constructed since the destruction of the Holy Temple in 70 AD. We'll get to the importance of that in just a second. Here's the garments of the ordinary priest and the loom. It's already done, completely handmade, directly to the Mosaic Law. Here's the spinning wheel with colored threads arranged for the high priest's garments. Here's 2 of the 72 golden bells, all of them already made, to be around the hem of the high priest's robe, ready to go. Here's some of the golden flasks needed for water libation. Here's the silver shovel for removing ashes from the altar of sacrifice. Here's the gold and silver-plated ram's horn to be blown in the holy temple services. Here's the silver trumpets to announce temple services and regular festivals. Here's one of the harps to be used for music in the temple services. Here's one of the lyres to be used for music in the temple services. They got the instruments already done. Here's some of the wooden and golden lots used to determine which goat will be used for the sacrifice, which one will be the scapegoat as well. Here is the view in the middle, and that is pure gold, folks, of the golden altar of incense in the middle. Here's the actual knives right now sitting ready to go to be used for the sacrifices being offered at the temple. They're done. Here's the reconstructed out of gold, the table of showbread. Here's the laver. There's one of the incense chalices. Here's the actual garments waiting for the high priest. Here's the close-up of the breastplate. No, that's not fake ones you get in the gumball machine. They're spending some serious cash, folks. Those are actual jewels. Okay, in fact, things are getting so close, folks, that for the first time since it was removed by the Romans at the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, the golden menorah is not just finished, it's once again returned to the temple area. And right now, this happened just a couple weeks ago, folks. Wake up. The golden crown for the high priest to serve in the temple is now complete.
The Bible commands us.
So let me stop it right there, because then they go into something else there relating to the prophecies concerning the third temple. But you can see that everything is ready for the temple, but the order to give it. Okay, so once the order is given, we know that no doubt the Antichrist will be doing that, and the temple will start to be built, but we're getting very, very close to that event. Let's move on to the next one. All right, and I'll make this a little bit bigger. We're into 2009 now, and it says, Netanyahu will try to rebuild the Jewish temple. There's reports out that the prime minister, the current prime minister, now this was back in 2009, and Benjamin Netanyahu is now in office again. And there is speculation that he will be the one that will try to get this temple rebuilt. So it says, the leader of the northern wing of the Islamic movement in Israel believes that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will try to rebuild the Jewish temple. And speaking at a conference organized by the website Islam Online, the Doa Qatar Shia stated his belief that Netanyahu may try to build a Jewish temple, which the Islamic preacher called the false temple, and during this current term, after allegedly failing to do so in his first term as the prime minister in the late 1990s. And so we have the man still ruling in Jerusalem. He's the prime minister of Israel right now. So if there's anybody that would be the perfect candidate to allow this temple to do these things, it would definitely be Benjamin Netanyahu, because he is somebody that has does his stance is he does what he wants, and if he wants his people to build in East Jerusalem, he builds in East Jerusalem. And there is a good possibility that they may be right, that he will help them in the progression of the fulfillment of this prophecy. And this has nothing to do with Benjamin Netanyahu being the Antichrist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that he may be as an instrument used by God to help further get this done. So let's move on. Make this bigger so that you can see it. Jerusalem launches debate on the sharing the holiest site. Now there's talk about, well, maybe if they have a new peace plan and they use part of the Temple Mount area and then the other part of the Temple Mount area that is now empty, then they can put the third temple right there. Now look at this. It says, espousing a dream of harmony that may stretch credibility among even the most fervent believers in a dialogue among the great religions. The clerics in Jerusalem launched a project on Thursday aimed at finding a way to share the city's holiest and most sought over site. Even a Jewish religious scholar promotes it, acknowledges that it might need a divine intervention. Boy, you're not kidding. It's definitely going to need that, since they've been having all the wars over this area. And before a peaceful remapping of the area where Muslims built the 7th century Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque on the site of the biblical Jewish temple. We offer this vision for a long and deep discussion, and of course want to continue with the parallel research from the religions. And so that's what they're talking about. They're actually thinking that they're going to be able to build this temple right next to the Dome of the Rock. And of course, many of the Muslims disagree with that, and they'll oppose that. But at least now, in the progression of things that are coming, showing us that the prophecy will be fulfilled, that's the direction that they're going. And here is another one. Let me scale this down just a little bit so we can read it. It gets fuzzy when you get, there you go. It says, is there a place for God's holy mountain in Jerusalem? And what I wanted to show you here, this is another one of those articles talking about how they want to bring together these religions and have the Jews build their temple side by side. And there's actually a picture, and you'll see here's the Dome of the Rock. This is the third most holy site for the Muslims, and they're saying that they would be able to build the temple right here, the third Jewish temple right next door to it. So there's been talk about that, and only God knows if that would be the case, but there's certain things that show us that it may be the case, and we need to continue on. Now, the Jewish world, they took obviously a survey was taken. The survey, 64% want the temple rebuilt. So there's a lot of communication out to the world what the Jews are thinking about. And they're thinking about their historical rights, and one of their historical rights, the building the temple that was lost. And almost 2/3 of the Israelis, including half of the scholars, would like to see the temple rebuilt, believe that it is important to commemorate. So there's really not much more to say about this, except for the fact that when the survey was taken, it just shows you that now they're moving, and more people are talking about what they want done on the Temple Mount, and they want to get more aggressive to it. Now here is another one of those articles, Temple Institute to build the sacrificial offer, and Beshtiva. It says the Temple Institute will begin building the sacrificial altar on Thursday, at Tisha B'Av, a fast day when the Jews mourn the destruction of the temple some 2,000 years ago. And what they did is, in this article, it talks about certain rocks that they were going to be getting out in order to use for the temple surface there, and they were just showing you in this article. And as a matter of fact, there was a movie here. So if you want to see the movie, you can just Google this headline and watch the movie. But I just wanted to show you the direction that Israel's going, and it continues to go. And they're laying out the rocks here for us. Gathering the Stones, Israel's news photo, Temple Institute. So they're gathering up these stones. There's certain things that they have to do in order to have them use those stones. And this article will talk about that. But again, what I'm trying to show you, the bottom line is they're in preparation, doing everything that they need to do in order to fulfill the prophecy. Now, it says the Torah says that no iron tool should be used on the altar stones. Glick explained, the altar represents a connection to life, and to the creation of the world. Iron is the opposite. It is used to build tools of war, death, and destruction. And this is one of the reasons why the cornerstone could not be chiseled out with iron. So same thing with the stones here. So let me go on to the next one. Excuse me. Make it just a little bit bigger for you. What Muslim leader wants the temple rebuilt? Now, a lot of people will ask, is there any chance that a non-Jew would work with the Jews to build the temple? Because there's a lot of talk that there's a possibility that the Antichrist might be he might be Islamic. But we know that Arabs can come together, or people of the Islamic faith can come together. We know that because we saw what happened with Anwar Sadat when they made the peace treaty with Egypt and Israel. They worked at something that the whole world thought it was never going to happen. And it did happen. And what we're seeing now, we saw Jordan sign some kind of a peace deal with, I believe it was in 1994, with Israel. And they've been a moderate nation with Israel. Of course, things are changing there as well. And you saw what happened to Egypt in the Psalm 83 seminar that I just gave. But so, is it unrealistic to think that in the last days something is going to happen? God is going to do something to try to bring people together to get this third temple? This article talks and deals with that. It says, with the Middle East still in chaos and rumors of war in the air, the idea of rebuilding a Jerusalem temple on the foundation occupied and administered by the Islamic militants seems fanciful, even preposterous. But the author of a new book of the Islamic Antichrist, A Shocking Truth About the Real Nature of the Beast, returned from Turkey recently with the news a pragmatic Islamic teacher and best-selling author of the Jewish Sanhedrin rabbis are conspiring to do just that. Let me scroll down here a little bit. It says, Aden Akhtar, who uses the pen name of Haran Yahweh, is a controversial but highly influential Muslim intellectual and author with more than 65 million of his books in circulation worldwide. Akhtar recently met with 3 representatives from the re-established Jewish Sanhedrin, a group of 71 Orthodox rabbis and scholars from Israel, to discuss how religious Muslims, Jews, and Christians can work together on the project. So what's the project? Rebuild the temple. Rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount. So you have one of these high-profile Turks from Turkey, a well-known man who's calling for peace. And of course, we do know that the Antichrist, he's going to come out calling peace, and then everybody's going to see that he really wasn't a peaceful person at all. But at least now you have the idea that somebody is actually going to do this. So they're making moves for it. So this is the person that they're talking about. Excuse me. And there's a bio about him that you can just Google this if you would like. You can get all the kinds of information that you want about him. As a matter of fact, let me see. There's the website. Let me scroll right up for you. And this would be the website that you can go to, and you'll find out all about him. This is what he looks like. The photo was taken in 2007. They'll give his background, born in Ankara, which is in Turkey. And when you scroll down, they give you all the different references about him to prove where he is from and everything, the nature of his family, where they were from. And you'll see that you can get as much information on him as you want. But the bottom line is, this man is sitting down with the Sanhedrin discussing peace and rebuilding their Jewish temple. This is a huge deal. So let me get back again as we go forward now. This is an article that came out that I was just talking about. This is the second page to that article. Let me make this a little bit bigger. It should be blown up for you right there. And so Okra explained his vision for rebuilding of Solomon's temple to Richardson. He was interviewing, this is Richardson, this is Okra. So it says, the place of Solomon is a historically important place, and rebuilding it will be a very wonderful thing. It is something that any Jew, a Christian and Muslim should welcome with enthusiasm. Every Muslim, every believer will want to return to those days, to experience those days again, and howbeit, particularly to bring the beauty of those days back. Akhtar added that the Temple of Solomon would be built and all believers will worship there in tranquility. And during his meeting with the Sanhedrin rabbis, Akhtar expressed his belief that the temple could be rebuilt in 1 year. It could be done in a year at most. It could be built to the same perfection and beauty. And the Torah says that it will be built in 13 years. If I remember correctly, it could be built in a year in its perfect form. So here again is more proof that we do see Muslim, and he has a group with him of Muslims that want to have peace with the Jews and help them build, and this is huge, help them build their temple. And of course, this shouldn't come to surprise to anybody who knows what the Bible has to say, because this is exactly what Jesus Christ told us was going to happen. Now this is a program that I videoed, and in that video, as a matter of fact, I even have a better one for you. I'm pretty sure it says, let's see here. Now we'll just play this one for time constraints. Just keep this going. But you'll see that I'm going to move this up a little bit because they're introducing the part of the Sanhedrin. And this is Okra, and he'll be talking. This was part one of this.
Harmony and love between us, and succeed in finding the ways of increasing the understanding, harmony, and love between our peoples.
And that was a prayer that he had made for him, saying that he wants harmony and he wants, you know, essentially what he's saying when you watch the video, the full video, was interfaith movement. We'll take in the Christians, we'll take in the belief of the Muslims, I mean, with the peace, we'll have peace with them. And of course, we know from the Bible that this Antichrist man, and I'm not saying that he is, I'm just saying that he is working to try to get this built. Who knows? He could be, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm not going to say that right out. But what the bottom line is that the last days there's going to be a false religion, and when they start saying that we're going to link up with the Muslims, they're linking up with the Allah. So they're taking in Jehovah and they're linking Allah in with Jerusalem, and this is definitely something that they shouldn't be doing, and God sees this as an abomination. And obviously what's going to happen when the temple is actually built, the Jews are going to find out that they made a huge mistake, and that they're going to have to pay for the price of idolatry, hooking up with a foreign god. And of course, here is some other information about this. It says, you met with the rabbis and you mentioned it is possible to work together to build a worship center on the Temple Mount. And the worship center that they're talking about at the Akhtar's site is the actual temple, the third temple. So there's other information, there's other interviews where he's talking about this. The owner of the issue is blessed, or the issue is the Mahdi. And what he is saying in this report here is that it will be the Mahdi, or the Islamic savior who was going to do this, is the function of building the third temple. That's what he is saying. And there's another quote here: when Allah sends this beautiful person to earth, this subject will be dealt with, the subject of the rebuilding of the temple, as you can see right here. So Akhtar is pointing to really the Antichrist. And he is saying that he is really the Savior, but we know from the Bible and Christ who he really is. And here is another one. It says, what is stated in Destiny is that it would be the blessed Muhammad, I wanted you to see this, that is to say the blessed Messiah who will build it. Now this is just a blow-up of what I was trying to read. I wanted to make sure that you could see that without any problem. So if you're here to YouTube, you could just freeze it and read it. Now, the stone vessel with the priestly inscription uncovered in Jerusalem. It seems like over the last few years that Israel is finding all of these different artifacts. I don't think it's by accident. I believe that God is allowing to find all these things because we're going to have the temple rebuilt again. They're going to see it. Now listen to this. A rare 2,000-year-old ritual vessel made of limestone and inscribed with 10 lines of text has been discovered in an excavation near the Zion Gate of the old city of Jerusalem. It is an unprecedented find, according to Dr. Shimon Gibson, the archaeologist, who's head of the University of North Carolina team conducting the dig. So they're finding different things pointing to this third temple. It is a blessing to them, and of course, to me, it's a blessing because I know that the Lord's words are coming to pass. We're seeing all these different things that are showing us what's going to happen with the temple. Obama, like Romans who destroyed the Jewish temple. Jews read Lamentations of U.S. Consulate on religious saddest day. Marking the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, about 1,000 Jewish protesters today read the biblical book of Lamentations in front of the U.S. Consulate in Jerusalem to protest against the Obama administration's demand to freeze Jewish construction in East Jerusalem, or eastern section of the city. It says tonight marks the fasting date of Tisha B'Av, or the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, and commemorates a series of tragedies that befell the Jewish people, all on the same day, most significantly the destruction of the first and the second temples in Jerusalem, which occurred about 656 years apart on the same day. So this is one of those things on the Jewish holidays, the specific Jewish holidays, that these horrendous things that happen. And I believe that there's been a lot of things that have happened on these Jewish holidays, like the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And I believe that in the future we're going to again see days, on the certain days, where things are going to take place on the Jewish holidays. So let's continue. Alright, what this is here, this is a video, and this is huge, by the way. This is a video where the Jews are practicing to do the sacrifices. And now what they have done is they have built a replica looking exactly like the temple that used to be there when Christ was alive, the second temple. And they're doing this in preparation to teach their people how to do the sacrifices. So they're preparing for what the Lord told us that they were going to do. Look at this. Then we'll come back.
Today is really his historical event for the Jewish people. It is the beginning of the work of the Third Temple, construction for the Third Temple. Here in Mitzvah Jericho, we are building a field school for Kohanim and Levites in order to teach them the work that they have to do in Yerushalayim when the temple will be rebuilt.
We are starting to build the replica of the temple here in Mitzvah Jericho that will serve as a school to educate the Kohanim, the priests, how to serve in the temple. It will be an exact replica of the temple, and today we're drilling the holes for the libations, the water and wine libations in the altar.
And they will learn exactly what they have to do. When the time comes and the temple is rebuilt in Jerusalem, they will know exactly how to perform this service.
All right, so there you go. That is huge, man. I'm telling you, we are so close, people. You need to receive Jesus Christ today. Don't wait. Please don't wait. So I'm going to have to stop it here so that I can continue on, and this is going to be, I'll give you part 2 as soon as I can. I'm going to load this up and present it and put it under the seminar for Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38, those 2 wars. Thank you.